Okay. Welcome. I'm London Blue, and welcome to the Special Effects Props podcast with, hey, I'll just let them introduce themselves. Let's start with Renee, my co-host. Renee, would you introduce yourself and tell everybody what you do and all that good stuff?
Sure. I am Renee DeCamillis. I am a horror author and editor, and the author of the novella The Bone Cutters. And I'm currently an editor for Wicked House Publishing, an indie horror publisher.
Nice.
Very good.
Cher, would you like to go next?
Yeah, my name is Cheralyn Lambeth. I'm a professional costume prop and puppet builder. My work includes films such as The Muppet Christmas Carol, Evan Almighty, The Patriot, The Hunger Games, and a few others, and TV shows such as Dinosaurs and Homeland. And I also work on Sir Purr for our NFL team, the Carolina Panthers. I like to tell people I'm his veterinarian.
Hey.
Cool. Very cool. Kelly?
Yes. I am Kelly Farrah. I'm a prop master, have been for 44 years. And I've done a movie or two and some TV shows.
A movie or two. Have you all seen the promo that I made for him? He's got like 3 pages of just pure productions that he's worked on.
Let's see, Pirates of the Caribbean. What's that one? Oh yeah, Last Mohicans. Lots of stuff.
Yeah, and I met him when he was working on The Walking Dead.
That's right. Yeah,
down in Georgia. That was pretty cool.
It was.
Cher, you mentioned Hunger Games?
Yes. Yeah, they shot the Hunger Games here in and around Charlotte. They actually shot it in an area called Henry River, which was actually an abandoned mill village. Not too far. It was maybe about an hour, 45 minutes, an hour outside of Charlotte. And I helped work on, or I was a stylist for some of the photo shoots that they did for the Hunger Games. So it was pretty amazing. You can still rent out a time to go and see Henry Village. It's pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah, you had mentioned some type of con that you all have down there, and that you were going to send me an invite to when you all start planning that again.
Yeah.
Maybe if I get to come down for that, we can go over and check that out.
We absolutely could. But before the pandemic, they were doing like actual chartered tours where you could go and view the site. And I don't think they're doing the tours anymore, but you can still go. So I'll make sure to get you the information. We'll definitely go check it out.
Absolutely.
That sounds fun. So
yeah, that sounds fun. My first question, or all of these questions are to both of you, so you can take turns answering. The first question is, how did you get into what you do now?
Well, I could certainly start with that. For me, growing up, the movie Star Wars was a huge influence on me. The minute I saw it, I fell in love with it. And most people fell in love, the young ladies with Princess Leia, the guys like, oh, Han Solo or Luke Skywalker. I love the robots and alien creatures and special effects. I'm like, that looks like so much fun. And I started making my own costumes. My mom taught me how to sew. And so I started, doing that type of thing, cosplay before it was cosplay at a pretty early age. But fast forward quite a few years, when I was in college, I saw the movie Labyrinth. And that really influenced me because it was 3 of my favorite artists, George Lucas, Jim Henson, and David Bowie. And that movie looks like it was just so much fun to make and work on. And it was definitely, it was such a feel-good movie for me. And that's what inspired me to really pursue my career as a puppet builder. And luckily, I've actually been able to do that. Puppet jobs are few and far between, but I've had some pretty amazing opportunities.
That's really cool. And yes, Star Wars, I was in love with R2-D2 and CP3O. And yeah, that was my pull to the Star Wars. And then when Jabba the Hutt came out, I really thought Jabba the Hutt was a cool looking dude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there were so many technicians and builders and performers that went into bringing Jabba to life. It was really amazing.
Yeah.
I really liked Chewie and the Wookiees.
Yeah.
It's funny. I just did a talk about Bigfoot for another presentation. And true story, when they were shooting Return of the Jedi in the Redwood Forest in California for the indoor scenes, they had to have a crew walking with Chewbacca at all times so he wouldn't be accidentally mistaken for Bigfoot and shot by hunters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, true story.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Wow. And you mentioned the Labyrinth. Yes, I love that one too. I remember I was so in love with David Bowie.
Me too. Still one of my very favorite movies.
Yeah, girl crush or young girl
Jesus.
crush I had on David Bowie. Kelly?
Well, I loved Star Wars too, and I tried to look like Chewbacca, and that's where I am today. Let's see. I was a history nut, and I guess I did my own cosplay, but it was all historical stuff. So I was soldiers and guy stuff, and one day a friend of mine got a job, 2 jobs as a technical advisor on 2 different movies, and he couldn't do them both. And he said, "Well, you know a lot about John C. Fremont or some obscure thing." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, they're making a thing with Richard Chamberlain about John C. Fremont, and he plays Fremont." And oddly enough, Rip Torn played. Who did he play? Come on. I'm also very old. Anyway, he played him, a scout and everything. It was an odd combination, but anyway, I went there as a technical advisor. That was my first movie job, and nobody listened to me. So I ended up. The director wanted a certain thing, and what do you mean they didn't live in teepees? I like teepees, So anyway, so I just started making stuff for the prop guys because I knew how to write, cursive and old timey stuff, and make signs and paint. I was just a student of all that stuff because I was an artist. So, and I studied forging old letters and stuff like that when I was 6 or 7, So anyway, that's what I did. And I got in with the prop guys. And the next movie they did was Glory. And they said, "Hey, you know all about Civil War." So I loaded all the guns and I made all the documents and painted all the flags and painted the drums and all that stuff. They're all in the Smithsonian right now on permanent display. And that's it. So that's what started me.
Yeah, Kelly, it's interesting. A good friend of mine, he's long since passed away now, was a consultant on Glory, Brian Pahenka. He had written on,
Yeah.
he had written
We
on
worked together on Gettysburg too.
Yes, he was also on Gettysburg, and as you know, he passed away a few years ago, but I knew him quite well.
We had some great arguments on the day Lincoln was shot because
Really?
Yeah, he said Edward M. Stanton never wore glasses. I'm going, he's wearing glasses in every photograph. Oh, he just put them on for the picture. I'm going, who puts glasses on for a picture? So we had a big argument over that. But anyway, he wasn't into the propage so much as dates and stuff like that. So, but that's all I studied was stuff like that. So anyway,
that's very cool. And you mentioned because you can write cursive. It's so funny. I was just talking to Renee earlier. I was a guest on another podcast where we were talking about artificial intelligence and AI in writing and so forth, and I had brought up how my youngest daughter doesn't really know cursive because they taught it in elementary school for like 2 weeks, and that was it. So she came home and I'm having to teach her how to read and write in cursive because the school failed her on that. And so you said that you knew how to write it. It's sad that the younger generation today does not know how to write in cursive.
I was working on,
and that's sad. So they're not going to be able to read these historical documents.
I was working on Washington.
The government's going to be able to feed them whatever they want to feed them because they can't go back and verify any of the information because they can't read cursive.
Yeah,
it's really sad.
Well, it was sad because you can't read any historical documents either.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I used to have PAs and everybody come into my office when I'm writing all these letters for, George Washington or whatever. And they're going, wow, you know all that old time writing. And they'd never written cursive before. I'm going, that's
So I'm assuming that you also did calligraphy.
not for that, because
Okay.
they even brought a calligrapher in once because they wanted to see somebody write. And the calligrapher goes, they didn't write that way. They wrote like we write, a little
Yeah.
fancy perhaps. But,
Right. Yeah, I actually became really interested in calligraphy back in 7th, 8th grade.
Yeah.
And my mom got me a calligraphy kit. And I remember doing a project for one of my, I think it may have been a social studies project, maybe. But, I did the old paper with the burned edges. I stained it with tea bags and burned the edges. And then I wrote in calligraphy a verse on it, a Bible verse on it. But it was a Bible verse that was also used, I believe, in maybe Iron Maiden or Metallica, one of the heavy metal bands, where it says, and there'll be no more brains. The Bible scripture says there'll be no more pain. But in their version, it was, there'll be no more brains. And that's what I wrote. And I turned it in as my social studies project. Hey, I got A+ on it. But I remember playing around with that calligraphy pen set and how much I loved it. And something that's cool is when my great grandmother passed, I actually was awarded as part of her inheritance. I got as something that I wanted of hers. She had her old calligraphy pen that she used to write with when she was young. And I have it in my china hutch. So that's kind of dear to heart too. So that's kind of neat.
It was always hard for me because I'm left-handed and I cannot do anything right-handed.
Oh yeah, I can imagine then. Because a calligraphy pen, if you've never used one, it has like two little metal prongs that holds the ink up in between the prongs. Yeah. And you have to, and that's why the letters look so funny, is because you have to write a certain direction. You can't just go any direction because it'll bend the metal and tear your paper. Yeah. Or all your ink will run out in one spot.
So I had to make it all look like it was written by a right-hander. So it worked.
Okay, so we've jumped off right on the start of speaking about movies and stuff. So what is it like working on a movie set?
Well, how did you get in?
Like one big family? Do people tend to stay in their own groups?
It depends on the production. I've worked on some really large productions that people were kind of in their own departments, and you might never see somebody, for instance, very often in administration unless there was a payroll problem or some of the other departments. Then I've worked on smaller movie productions that were kind of like a family, depending on what the production is. So, I really do think it's on the production. Not all of them, unfortunately, they don't have big budgets sometimes, and you all kind of work together to make things work on a shoestring. So it definitely depends on the production. I've noticed that the big historic period pieces that I've worked on tend to be, much more distant. I worked on The Patriot when they were shooting down here in North and South Carolina, and that was a huge production. It went on and on for quite some time. And, they had a team or a crew in Charlotte. They had a team and a crew in Charleston. They had a team and a crew in other areas. So it was definitely a huge spread out production. But some of the smaller ones, you definitely get that sense of family.
Yeah, I was supposed to do that. Anyway, and if you work in LA or New York, both of which I hate to work in, but then you have to stay in your own little union job, I try to help the set dresser or something, and you can't touch the furniture. I've had that before. You guys are nuts, because we work in the South or someplace like that, and everybody jumps in and does everything. So
you would think that everybody would welcome any kind of help.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've seen guys
the production
struggling, camera department struggling to get their stuff up, and we'll up a hill or something, and we'll help them. And normally it's fine, but in LA or something, don't touch my car. Don't do that. Don't do that. So that's stupid. But
is that because of union issues or
just union stuff? Because they're all about it in LA and New York. I'm union too, but I'm not gonna refuse getting help.
Right.
You're all doing the
Renee-
same.
Yeah.
Working on the
Renee,
same.
I think Renee has a question that might fit into this one, as far as how everybody works together.
Yeah, I was really curious about the actors that you've worked with. Are most of them friendly, or do you find a lot of them to be a little kind of uppity and arrogant? And I kind of wonder about like some of those things you hear in the media, like with those insane demands and expectations on the set. Is there any like truth behind that?
There's truth behind it, but you get all that stuff from wardrobe. For some reason, actors hate wardrobe. So, but they love us. So, Southern was like that. Everybody warned me, oh, don't smoke on set. Well, I didn't smoke anyway, and don't do this and don't do that. And oh, he'll fire you right there. And he can't fire me. And evidently he can, but he didn't do it. He had me running the first scene he was in for various things. It was like 105 degrees. I'm running. It was in South Carolina, in Charleston, running like crazy, getting him everything he wanted. I drew this giant map of the Charleston Harbor, and this was a Civil War thing called the Hunley. And he was a general. They were having a meeting, and he wanted a glass of wine to set on the map, and he wanted bread, and he wanted cheese, and he never named everything at once, but so I'd run and get it and try to find things like that. Luckily, the caterers had a lot of stuff. And finally, he was going to ask me to do something else, and I'm just sitting there, oh my God. You know what? It's fine. And that was it. I proved myself to him. He used to come to me and say, does this hat make me look stupid? Would General Beauregard ever really wear something like this? And I'd go, no. He'd go, oh, I thought not. So. So I threw the costume designer under the bus, but he was a buddy of mine that messed with me all the time. So, but like Barbara Hershey, I heard from wardrobe that, oh, Barbara Hershey, she's terrible and blah, 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 blah. And I made a mistake once out loud and said, well, Babs, and everybody goes, oh, like that. Goes, Kelly's the only one that can call me Babs. Let's get that straight right now. And she was lovely, very lovely person. So I don't know. That was Last of the Dogmen. But anyway, I've never run into anybody that was a problem. They're all very nice.
Nice.
That's good. Cher, what about you? I mean, he kind of mentioned wardrobe.
Actors are people like we are. And I definitely have some really fond memories, fond stories of some of the productions I've worked on. I was just talking about The Patriot, and while I didn't work very closely with him, I well remember one day after a shoot, we were getting ready, everything, cleaned up, getting ready to shut down. And Mel Gibson, who's the main character in that movie, walked by. Well, he clearly had just had his wig taken off, and his hair was in all different directions. And it just was wild. And we were kind of looking like, oh no. And he looked back at us and he laughed and he said, yeah, you should see the other guy. So that was definitely a fun story. But I have to say, one of my favorites was I worked on a movie called The New World that shot up in Virginia. Yeah. And it wasn't a very well known, but it was a historic piece. Of course, it was about the Jamestown colony. And Colin Farrell was one of the main characters in that. And, we always hear the stories about Colin Farrell being a bad boy and, getting into all sorts of trouble. But I will remember there was one day where the catering truck on set had a fire and they couldn't make, they were trying to pull together food for everybody. And Colin Farrell himself bought lunch for everybody that day to make sure that all the cast and crew were fed. So I thought that was actually kind of a really nice behind the scenes story, because that's not the kind of thing you hear. You always hear about how they caused trouble, but here he was out of his own pocket making sure that the production was taken care of. So I always thought that was a great story.
I will say Colin and I have gone drinking quite a bit.
Have you?
The other word is fucking this and fucking that.
Yes. Well, he is an Irish boy, I can imagine. So yeah.
Yeah, he is a hell of a nice guy though.
Yeah.
And Johnny Depp as well. Somebody asked me that once a week, is Johnny Depp really nice? And, he is. I mean, we on Pirates, the first time I saw him, he was always dressed as Captain Jack.
Oh, yeah.
And I had come on the set later. I was the armorer and painted the flags and all that stuff, made all the pirate flags for the movie. And we met in the Bahamas on a dock, and he's walking one way and I'm walking another. And we just sat there and stared at each other and walked around each other. I'm going, why is he staring at me? And he called me a guapo, and a guapo or whatever, what handsome. And we just hit it off that way, and I'd hand him his loaded gun, and if it didn't fire, it's a flintlock, so did I do something wrong? Oh no, John, you're fine. And he was just a great guy. And we had a hurricane coming, and they weren't going to move anybody. They were going to let us all ride it out. Johnny was going to take his boat and go away. They wanted him to leave with his boat. He has an island out there. So, and he refused to go unless they flew the whole company to LA from the Bahamas. And I just wanted to go to Oregon, but they wouldn't let me go there. And, we just sat it out, and it's a good thing we did, because the place was destroyed. I mean, there was no place for us to go, and everything was flattened. So he did stuff like that a lot, make sure we didn't overwork or whatever. So
yeah,
really
I'm glad.
hear.
I'm glad to hear that. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's what I was gonna say, because you hear all in the media and they focus on all this negative stuff, and that's why
they don't work with them though. They don't spend any time with them, so they can say anything they want to. But I never had troubles with anybody, and I mean, some of them were just so nice. It was unbelievable. I've done 4 shows with Sam Elliot and 5 with Tom Berenger. In fact, we were going into business together, and we may still. But yeah, Sam would come to other movies I was working on, and he happened to be in town, and Sam Elliott's coming. So all the director and the producers would line up and stuff. Kelly, hey, where's my old amigo? And they're going, what are you talking about? And I'd come up and, hey, there he is. And, and hey, where's Ski? And that's my assistant. Hey, Ski. And then he'd say hi to us, and hey, you doing all right? Yeah. Okay. See ya. And everybody's going, well, wait a minute. He just left. He just came to see us. So that was great.
Nice.
He ages all his own stuff. We give him a brand new thing. It's not brand new when he gets used to it. He has through with it. He has an aging kit of his own. And him and Buck Taylor, who played Newly on, anyway, they've been in a lot of movies together. And they both age all their stuff or buy original stuff or whatever. And, it's kind of I know how they are, so it makes it really cool. I don't know. It's neat.
Now you said they age this. How do they age it? How do they do
They have
that?
all these kits, like their hats are. I want everything to look like it's been used.
Yeah.
You know how I like it, Kelly. But anyway, so I never hand him like a new holster. It's an old original holster, or something like that. But he'll take a brand new hat that he bought from somebody in Gettysburg, and he'll age it himself. He's got all this smudgy stuff and sandpaper, and he's got a regular little kit. And I give him spurs, and I aged him, Sam, but probably not enough. He goes, oh no, not enough. So he'll work on that. I mean, it's nuts. It's kind of cool though.
Yeah.
They're the only 2 I know of that do their own stuff.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that, because that was actually my job on the Patriot and on the New World. I was what they called a dyer ager. And that's when we take all the brand new, beautiful clothes that the costume shop has built that we bought, and then we make them look old and worn and lived in, and sometimes torn up and bloodied. So yes, as Kelly was saying, we use sandpaper, we use cheese graters, We used
Oh.
a type of dirt called schmear and schmutz. And those are products that clean dirt basically that you use on clothing to make it look like it's dirty. And so that was a large part of our job is we just made all of that look like it had been worn and used for years instead of just brand new right out of the shop.
On Pirates, they used cement mixers.
Oh yes.
And put
Yeah,
smooth
we would
rocks
rotate
in
some washing machines with rocks. Yeah,
it. And
Literally stonewashed.
literally.
Yeah.
eggs in a cement mixer with smooth stones and just let it go for a while.
Yep.
Prop master.
Wow.
That reminds
Well-
me of my teenage years, putting holes in my jeans. I needed it to look real, and I would use sandpaper.
That's
Yeah.
exactly it.
I put a little slit in it, and I'd use sandpaper to make it look real. You know, now they charge a fortune for those kind of pants, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's how it's done. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I even died a couple times myself. And then I'll tell you this just because Queen Latifah made a movie called Bessie where she plays a singer in the 20s and 30s. Bessie Holiday, I think it is. And or not Holiday, come on. Bessie something. Bessie Smith. Anyway, I got the job of being her hatter, basically. I made all her hats, and they're all 1920s hats. Her tail's showing, and so that was fun. And I have the exact same size head as she has, but we never told her that I tried every hat on, you know. But anyway, that was my not prop job. It was cool.
Well, speaking about props, another question for you. What happens to all those marvelous props for the movies and TVs once production is over? Who owns the copyrights to that?
Well, there's not usually copyrighted unless it's like on
Disney. I know Disney copyrights everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, who gets the props? Do you all get to take them home with you?
Oh yeah. Daryl's stuff, his crossbow, things like that. Those, even though we bought them at Walmart, that's copyrighted basically. I mean, you know, it's Daryl's, and they've all been changed enough they don't look like the Walmart special. But most of the stuff, you know, they'll have like an asset list at the end of the show. And if anything's over $300 or something, as an example, then they want to know what you did with it. But hardly anything's over $300 when I buy it. So I can take it all home. I can, you know, they don't. Now, Walking Dead likes to save everything because they make more and more and more shows. So most of the stuff we save, but like the chair backs, you know, we supply the chairs too, you know, and I just took all the chair backs from Walking Dead because Walking Dead was no more. So I had Daryl and Carol and all those, you know, chair backs and gave them away or sold them or whatever. Because I don't care about them. But that's how I get so many props, is because at the end of the show, nobody wants to store those things generally, you know, because Disney will store everything. I made flags for Pirates 2, and I went back for Pirates 4, and there were all my flags all stored in boxes and stuff. And I did like 3 Blackbeard's flags, which they never used. They decided to do a phony one for him. And that was a funny story. Anyway, the real Blackbeard beard was 6'7". And so we made this giant sword for him and all this stuff. And I'm getting in the elevator at the hotel, and I forget his name that played Blackbeard in the movie. Well, he's about 5 foot, and I'm standing there going, "Oh my God, this sword's going to just drag when he wears it," you know. And it did. I mean, you know, why did they cast you as Blackbeard? I don't get it. You know? Anyway, it was whatever.
Yeah,
I would think
It's true. There's also prop houses where you can get things, and a lot of stuff gets reused. Many times in films, you might see a familiar prop or accessory that was in another production. So sometimes props will go and get reused over and over again.
Oh yeah, and I'll do it as just like anybody else will.
Yeah, I was gonna say that if some of those props that you can take, I would imagine they would have a high resale.
I've lived off of a lot of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just oddly enough, like Turn Washington Spies, a little show on AMC. They ran for 4 seasons, and AMC hated it because it didn't have any zombies in it. So it was historical. Well, all the documents and stuff I wrote for that thing over 4 seasons, it got a following, and people, everything that was supposed to be in that document I really wrote, so they'd blow them up and look at them and think, oh my gosh. And I did it for the actors mainly. And I saw a clothespin on eBay that was supposedly used in the show. Well, I never used clothespins like that, but they were selling it for $35 for a wooden clothespin. I'm going, wait a minute. And it was selling, So I got a couple of the documents out that we made zillions of copies from because, the actors destroy them or whatever. And I sold, 2 or 3 of them for $150 or something. And I'm going, wait a minute, this is pretty lucrative, So,
Right.
for about a year, I made my rent many times. And, it was great. So,
Good for you. Yeah.
Very cool. So Kelly, you mentioned the chairbacks. Are you allowed to divulge what happened to Carol and Daryl's chairbacks?
Let's see. I never got Daryl's. They disappeared quick. See, the actors can take them. That's their right. They can take their own chairbacks, and some of them collect them. Daryl's disappeared. A lot of times it's the producer, somebody like that. They'll just nab it on the last day. They know it's worth something. Carol's, I had 2 of them, and I gave them away, I think, to people named Carol. And I hate to say it, but I didn't like working on Walking Dead, and it wasn't my kind of show. And you're working in a prison set. Was my office, and you walk outside and there'd be 30 or 40 bodies in various states of disrepair and bloody every morning. And you'd actually go to meetings. Let's think of some new ways to kill people. Oh, okay. And we'd have big meetings about it. And it's just like, God, it's just depressing. But,
I would so love to have been on that.
I know. But
that actually brings up another question that I had. If either of you had any kind of real life horror stories of just like working on a set, like just terrible things happening, like things going wrong or nightmare people to work with or anything like that.
Never ran into anybody that were nightmares to work with except a couple producers. And I beat one up. And I pulled one off a horse. But let's see. I watched a man die, which was not very exciting, in Mexico, and he fell out of a crane. And that was faulty, but it was Mexico, so they didn't much care. It was just bizarre. It was terrible. And then I watched a horse die, which was even worse because it ran and got stabbed in the chest with a.
Oh no.
Well, I will say this wasn't, and I didn't experience this or witness it firsthand. I heard it from my colleagues, but I worked on the TV show Dinosaurs. And we actually built the dinosaurs in the New York shop, and then they got shipped to LA for finishing and filming. And from what I understand from some of the other builders, the first day that they were working on, that they were shooting, So the bodies, of course, were big characters, and the faces were operated by radio control. They had radio frequencies that operated the faces. Well, apparently, that radio frequency that they were using was a restricted military frequency in the area, and they had to go and reprogram things so that they were not using that frequency. And as I said, I unfortunately didn't get to witness that myself, but that was a story that I heard from some of my fellow puppet builders.
That could be interesting, huh?
I guess maybe that's one reason they don't do so much filming up in Green Bank and West Virginia around the.
It could be. Well, that and radios will set off explosives.
Yeah.
So,
True. Yes. Yes, they're actually doing some construction. Couple towns over, within 15-20 minutes from us. And we drive through there frequently because that's where you go. That's where we go through to get to Walmart and all the shopping hub. And we were driving through there one day, and here my ladybug's over there on her phone, and I'm like, it says turn off your cell phones. You're going into a blasting area, and she's like, nobody really does that. And she's like, how do we expect it? I just expect people to be driving and turning off their cell phones. That would cause more wrecks. No. I'm like, okay, but we go around this curve and we go, boom, it's your fault.
what happened?
So again, back to the actual props. What is your favorite medium to use? What material do you like to use the best? What do you prefer to work with? And why?
That's a tough one. I think I have to say, as a puppet builder, I actually prefer good old-fashioned felt. There's so many things you can do with it. You can, of course, cut it easily. You can sew it. You can glue it. You can even mold it if you know the process to do it. And it's an amazingly versatile medium. And I think I have to say that's one of my favorites to work with.
And share a little further question on the puppets. Do you do like robotic animatronic puppets, or what's inside? Is it wire? I'm just curious of what the construction inside looks like.
I have not done much of the animatronics myself, at least not electric animatronics. Now, there are some animatronics you can do that the human performer does, like with strings or wires or additional mechanisms that the performer themselves operate. So I myself have not done a whole lot of the electrical animatronics that are out there, but it's a growing thing, obviously. And, now, of course, with Wi-Fi, you don't even need to connect them to anything. You've got your Wi-Fi that will do control mechanics sometimes. So it's definitely, it's really made a huge difference on operating puppets. Absolutely.
Cool. But you primarily work with more like the old school ventriloquist dolls and stuff. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
That's my specialty. Yeah.
I love it. I actually, when I was probably in first or second grade, my dad got me Charlie McCarthy ventriloquist doll. And I lost him over the years. And I don't know, maybe 12, 13 years ago, we found another one in an antique store. And I'm like, I gotta have him. I don't care how much he costs. I want him. I gotta have him. We got him. He's still in the original box. And I've got him stored away safely in my closet, in the upper part of my closet to protect him. But yes, I love ventriloquist dolls. I think they're so cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Kelly, what about you? What's your favorite medium to work with?
Oh boy. That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I can make armor, as you can see. I make a lot of stuff. But probably my basic stuff is the best, for the next, because I have to do so much research on everything. And leather. I like to make leather stuff. So, shooting bags and pipe bags, and I do beadwork and all that stuff too. But I just don't have time anymore. I know so many people that do better jobs. So what the heck?
Well, I love leather work. My aunt used to do leather work. She used to make wallets and belts and things like that. And I remember sitting and watching her, sitting there stamping the little flowers into the leather belts and how cool it was. And what you got there?
It's a flag left over from something. I think from Gods and Generals or something. But I paint flags a lot.
Nice. Very nice.
Some guy wanted to buy it, so I'm seeing it if I want to do it.
Okay, so what is your absolute favorite prop that you have made?
Oh, I could definitely answer that. And this was a very interesting process and experience. So when I was working on Homeland, I was assisting the prop master with a particular prop, and I won't spoil anything. I don't think we've already seen it all. Season 2, one of the main characters is attempting to assassinate the vice president by wearing, unfortunately, what they call a suicide vest, which was, of course, a vest filled with explosives. Well, we were trying to build a replica of that. And so here I am going out into town trying to find ball bearings and wire and detonation buttons and things like that. And the people at Home Depot and Lowe's are looking at you like, what are you doing? And I'm sure we probably got on all sorts of government watch lists for that. But we actually came to find out, interestingly enough, that the government contracts and has fakes of those made so that agents can identify them, know how to deal with them, know how to work with them. We ended up ordering a lot of that. But I worked on that. I helped build the base of that vest. And that was definitely it was a very good learning experience for me in terms of how to do research for things, how to find certain things that may not be easily and commercially available. And so that kind of counts as one of my favorite props because I really did learn a lot in the process of putting that together.
That is very interesting. And yeah, you would think, okay, going through Home Depot with that stuff, it's like, not
like, what are
following me, but the phone's gonna be sitting out front waiting on me. That's funny. Oh, okay, so I'm going to go on to, I know when most people think about props and movie sets, first thing that comes to their mind is like the blood and gore, special effects makeup, and the creatures that are in the movies. But there's so much more involved on just filming one scene, whether it be TV, movie, or whatever. There's so much involved in just creating one scene. Can you tell us more about what all's involved? Like, are there different departments or specialties for that? How many people work on one set at a time? How much diversity is involved in setting up one scene for one shot? I mean, how many different groups of people and how many people are on set at a time and so forth?
Oh, I could answer that one, I think. Of course, first you need to talk over things with the production designer and the director, what they want to see, in a certain scene. But the script, a prop is anything anybody touches. And if you ever get a chance on YouTube or something, it's an older film. It's about props.
Maybe you can share it with us and I can tag it to our podcast so people can look it up.
Anyway, anything in a script that's actually called for. If you're having a meal, well, props is the meal. Set dressing usually is the dishes and stuff like that. But you provide the glasses, you provide the drinks, the food. I've cooked more meals than anybody should, and I'm a lousy cook. But people like Ed Harris, they'll eat the whole thing before we even film the scene. So let's see. And if they shoot a gun, then that's what I do. I load the gun or whatever. If they write a letter, I write the letter. I provide all the stuff that they can do it with. If they're painting, if they're whatever they're doing. And generally, it'll mention it in the script. A certain painting on the wall, a lot of times set dressing's supposed to do it, but they don't. I end up painting it. And a lot of times on Civil War shows, things like that, the production designer will say, well, you're the expert on these things. We'll have the set dressers put all this stuff in, and you take everything that's wrong out when you get there. Okay. And so I'll take half the things away, put my stuff in, and that's what I did on Gettysburg. Every tent or interior or whatever, I did this set dressing too. So but it's easy for us. The big thing is if somebody uses a quill pen, it's a feather, and they'll put a pheasant feather out there. Well, you couldn't find a pheasant feather. So you go in and take all the set dressing stuff out and put in real goose feathers and things like, I don't know how many times I've done that. And it's just, and they don't realize that back even in the Revolutionary War, they had mechanical pens and pencils, things like that. So they had eyeglasses in the Middle Ages, they had umbrellas. The Egyptians had umbrellas and things like that. So nobody just thinks about that stuff, so, but I have to. So, and I don't know what even the question was, but it's a lot of people, dressing and props work together quite a bit. So,
Cher, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I definitely can add to what Kelly was saying. There are a lot of people involved in props like that. And many times if you have a prop that has to do a job, so to speak, you've got so many different versions of that same prop. This past summer, I just worked on a film here in Charlotte called Please Don't Destroy, and they had a prop that had several different versions. It was like, okay, here's the prop at, say, 3 weeks, here's the prop at 6 weeks, here's the prop at going on. And so we had to do several different versions of the same prop because it played at different points in the film. So there are a lot of different people involved in that type of thing, and there are so many different versions of one prop. Excuse me, and also one costume. I didn't work on this film, sadly, but one example I love to use when I do a talk is the Batman movies. He had so many different versions, and I'm speaking specifically of the Michael Keaton version, so many different versions of that one costume. He had a costume he saw from the front, a costume he saw from the back, a costume he sat down in, a costume he stood up in, the hero shot, costume he could run in, and there were so many different versions of it. And it's the same thing with props. Absolutely.
You can never have just one. Because if you just have one, say holster or saddle or whatever, something's always going to happen to it, and you've got to have another. Well, where's your other one? They expect it, so.
Wow. Yeah. And see, I never even thought about that. The multiple props for one item. That's
that rowboat
very good point.
Get destroyed. And well, where's your next rowboat? Okay. We go to the truck and get another rowboat, because you have to have more than one thing of everything. If you're a prop guy, especially, because you get nervous if you don't. And it's an amazing, a prop truck has so much stuff on it. It's unbelievable. And nobody knows it. We've got it all hidden around and stuff, but we know where it is. So.
Well, along that same line, I think Renee had a question regarding props and CGI.
Oh yeah, I was curious just with the the overabundance of use of CGI in movies and shows. Do either of you feel that that threatens your career and what you do, or does it maybe give you that motivation and that drive to just do your work the best you can so that it's always in demand?
Well, I can answer that one. 20 years ago, I thought we were all going to be out of business. We'd all, but they don't want to use CGI it's expensive for one thing. And some of the guys aren't that good, and they like the real thing. A lot of directors, if you destroy a ship, you actually destroy a ship, or you fire a cannon, you fire a cannon. And they can't reproduce that look quite as well. Walking Dead because of the Rust gunshot crap, which, by the way, the only other person killed, I know everybody's going to say on the Crow, but actually the only other person that was killed with an actual bullet took place in 1916. Since then, nobody's been killed with an actual bullet till Rust, who just called me and asked me to be their armorer again in Montana, and I refused. But
I was
anyway.
going to ask you about that when you had brought up the guns.
Yeah.
About what that is, that's the Alec Baldwin
Uh-huh.
incident. I was, but that's sorry.
No, that's okay.
That's a different question.
That's okay.
I was just curious because I saw that story and I'm like, because they were prosecuting him, but it's a prop, and I'm like, why does he have a real loaded gun on a set? Like, he should, as an actor, you're supposed to trust that that's not going to really hurt anybody. And hearing you bring up that you did the guns and you had to load the guns, it instantly brought that story to my mind. Like, why would an actor be held liable for a prop that ends up literally killing somebody?
Gray area, because
Yeah.
you have to cock the gun before it'll shoot, for one thing. You never point a gun at anybody. I don't care if she asked him to point the gun at her, you still point away from her a little bit, because cameras make it look like you're pointing right at him anyway.
Right.
And of course, the prop master should have been the one, I mean, the armorer should have been the one that was handing the gun to him. She wasn't even there. The first AD, who had violated many things before, handed it to him without checking. They say, oh, yeah, we checked the gun and everything. But we always go to the actor and say, okay, here's the gun. You can see this. And, and the first AD is the safety man on set, supposedly. So we let them look at it too. Because actors don't usually want to hold a gun if they don't have to, especially now. But after that, Walking Dead did all of their gunshots. They had us take the firing pins out of all the real guns. They up to last year, they used blanks and real guns all the way through. Now we're using a lot of airsoft guns, little pellet guns. And we had to dismantle the real guns. And they did all the gunshots CGI, except maybe 3, I think, for all of season 11 and COVID episodes and all that stuff. So, but they have the money and they had a really good guy, and they had us to tell them what would happen. But yeah, it's changed a lot of things. But the next show, I'm doing regular old armory work because I filmed the same place that Alec Baldwin worked at. And we had 20 guys shooting at each other in that same church, and nothing ever happened, of course. But yeah, he was partly responsible, though, because he was also the executive producer. He's the one that got cheap, hired the girl that has only been an armorer twice. Her father was I know this. I've argued with him for years because he was a fast draw expert. He won a few contests at fast draw. That was his big claim to fame. And he'd come in, we're doing a gun battle with actors, and you all need to learn to fast draw. Well, there's nothing more dangerous than that, for one thing. And old gunfighters didn't do that crap anyway. So we've argued many times over that. And I always won. But anyway, I could go on, and nobody wants to hear all that. So there you go.
Well, talking about fighting, stepping out away from the gunfighting for a minute, but I do have a question. From the Pirates of the Caribbean, the big fight that takes place on the water wheel, and it goes rolling through the.
They really did.
Was that CGI?
Nope.
They were actually on it.
Yeah, Gore Verbinski wants everything to be real, so he does that. And even like the Kraken, when it destroys a ship, we're out in the bay with a real ship, and he's got these big arms that are painted blue so they can make them out, and they actually crash them down on that ship and
That
things
is
like
so
that. And it's just so
cool.
bizarre. But he wants the real effect, and he's got all the money.
Nice.
So, there.
So, Cher, and back to you. On the Muppets, again, I'm back to the what's inside of the Muppets. What are inside of the puppets that are, like I said, or if they're animatronic or old school ventriloquist, or are they moving from CGI type stuff? What is your experience with the puppets that you have made? Do you make them to actually move or be moved by an actor, or is it CGI?
It's interesting, and I'm with Kelly. I was afraid when CGI came out. I'm like, well, that's it for me. They're going to do all of these CGI creatures, and they're not going to need actual puppeteers anymore. But luckily, that has not been the case. I was really excited and really glad to see, for instance, in the latest round of Star Wars films, J.J. Abrams absolutely wanted Yoda to be a puppet again, as opposed to the CGI that they used in, for instance, the prequels, in Phantom Menace and the prequels. Because there really is something about the character that's there with you that you can interact with and see and view as a character, as opposed to CGI that they're going to add in post-production. So I was very glad for that, and of course the Henson Company has kept with doing actual puppets, which I've always been very glad to see. And I personally think CGI and actual puppetry can work well together. If you remember the movie Where the Wild Things Are, of course, they had the big actual fur suits, but then all of the facial features, all the expressions and everything were CGI on those suits. So that was a great hybrid where you could have the performer interacting with the other actors, but at the same time, the CGI could do expressions that animatronics just don't have the finesse to do yet. It's still you just can't get that slight finesse of expression, and CGI can. And I think that was a great meld. You think back too to Jurassic Park, the first Jurassic Park film. That was an amazing melding of actual dinosaurs, so to speak, and CGI. And I thought they did an incredible job with that. And I think each one of those complemented the other. It worked well. And I have to admit, I've been very glad to see that actual puppetry hasn't quite gone away. And I hope it will continue to stay in the forefront.
Definitely agree. I hope so too. And I agree with you. I didn't think about the actors having to, it's easier for them to react to an actual character sitting in front of them versus something that's going to be on the screen later.
It is.
Oops, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say real quick, if you think about the Lord of the Rings films, Andy Serkis as Gollum, he was amazing. I mean, he was just there in a CGI suit, a motion capture suit, mocap suit, as they call it. But he was there on set acting as Gollum. And I think that made all the difference in the world.
Well, and something else, like, I know, like, when they were talking about the new series, the Addams Wednesday, the new series, that thing on that series was played by an actual actor. The hand was played by an actual actor, that it wasn't CGI. And I thought that was really cool. It had pictures of him in like a green suit from here, to where his hand was the only thing exposed. And I thought that was kind of cool. So I guess it was a combination of actor and CGI as well. But then I was also watching what I thought it came up just today, actually, Max Headroom popped up on the screen. Yes. Y'all remember Max Headroom?
Yes.
And I loved him. And all the time, I always thought he was a computer animated character and just voiced over. But no, he was a full-blown actor. They put him in full-blown makeup, and he acted that part as a computer animation, which I never knew that. I thought that was really interesting. So that was kind of an odd twist on here. We're introducing, computer characters to you, but it's still an actor in makeup. I thought, that's really cool.
It's funny too, because with COVID and everything, it was on Walking Dead, it was, of course, we took all these precautions, but actors couldn't wear eyeballs. I mean, they couldn't wear, what am I trying to say? You know, those things.
Contacts.
Contacts, yeah.
Contacts.
Contacts, exactly. They didn't want them to wear contacts. So that was a CGI. Whenever they changed their eyeballs, they actually came in and CGI'd their eyes. So they'd look like, you know, walkers or whatever, you know. I thought that was interesting. But
I would think that it would probably have been cheaper to do it as CGI rather than buying custom contacts for everybody.
Probably in that case, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, these guys were.
Renee, did you have anything else you wanted to ask them before we move on?
I didn't have any questions. No, I just think I was surprised, and actually it was refreshing to hear you say that they'd like to rather have the real thing than the CGI, because here I had thought, even I don't do your work, but I was thinking that people are going to lose their jobs, and I'd rather see the real thing. And I actually do think of, like, how do the actors make it look real when they're trying to interact with something that's not even there? Like, I mean, talk about messed up. I mean, you really got to dig deep for that, but it's refreshing to hear that they'd rather have the real thing, because I thought, oh, well, no, it's just going to be so much easier to just have a computer do it. But I didn't know it was really expensive to do that.
Yeah, it's refreshing for me too, because that means I might be able to work for a while longer.
Oh, yeah. When I was running around on ships trying to load all the guns in pirates, and a Kraken attacked, well, they needed all the water to come off of his arms and all that stuff. And they actually dropped water from the top of the ship, which of course didn't do much good for my flintlocks, but a few of them went off, and they're fighting and, you know, doing all that stuff. And then I'd run out and load them again. And the whole crew was, of course, soaked. And their stuntmen getting flung all over the place. But it was all real, you know, it was really done, you know, except for the Kraken himself. But
That's actually really cool. That's really cool. Okay, well, how about this, guys? I noticed everybody's glasses were starting to get a little empty. How about we take a 5-minute potty break, refilled break, and I will ask you guys to come back in and maybe do a little show and tell, show us something and tell us how you created it. And then we'll wrap up from there. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Hey, everybody. So it looks like we're going to take a little break, and we will be right back.
hey, nobody look, I'm standing up.
Oh no!